Hello, and welcome back to my World of Tanks Xbox 360 Tank Strategy Guide. Today we are going to be talking about the T110E3. This is probably the best tank destroyer in the game. It has a very accurate gun, and this tank is probably the most heavily armored tank in the game as far as tank destroyers go. All the other tank destroyers have weaknesses. This tank has barely any weaknesses from the front if you meet this tank head on. This tank gets a 155mm AT gun. Is the T110E3. I will be talking about how to use this tank and what you should do in certain situations. First, let's talk about the stats of this tank. This tank gets 2050 hit points. That is pretty good. Most tanks at tier 10 usually get 2000. This gets 50 more. The German tank destroyers get about 2,200 hit points. The signal range of this tank is 750 meters. The speed limit of this tank is only 24 kilometers per hour. This is a very slow tank because it is so heavily armored. The speed limit going backwards is 8 kilometers per hour. You're not going to be able to back up very quickly in this tank. The weight of this tank is 74.73 tons. This is a very heavy tank. The load limit of this tank is 78 tons. Let's talk about the crew of this tank. This tank gets 5 crew members. It gets a commander, a gunner, a driver, and 2 loaders. Now, your commander acts as your radio operator. Let's talk about the armor of this tank. This tank is the most heavily armored tank destroyer in the game. This tank can hold off flanks. This tank, you can be aggressive with this tank. This is how I play the tank. I play this tank very aggressively. You don't have to sit back and hide because you have weak armor like some of the other tank destroyers who have a lot of weak points. This tank hardly has any weak points. You can be very aggressive in this tank if you have support. You don't want to YOLO it and go solo all by yourself and get flanked because this tank is very slow. The frontal armor of this thing is 305 millimeters. Now, if you're looking at one of these things from the front, you want to shoot this thing in the lower glacis, the lower part of the tank. You want to shoot about where the headlights are. Where you see these front headlights, you want to shoot the lower part about right there. You don't want to shoot directly in the middle. The lower glacis is very troll. If you shoot where the headlights are, the lower part is very flat right there. Very flat. If you try and aim directly in the center, you will ricochet. Sometimes, which is why some people are like, oh my gosh, I shot that tank in the lower glacis, why didn't it penetrate? Well, it didn't penetrate because it is very well rounded right there. If you look from the side, it is rounded. It's not very flat in the center at all. It's flat on the sides where these headlights are. What I also see most people doing is shooting this commander hatch, or what they believe to be a commander hatch, on the top of this tank. That is not a weak point. You are not going to penetrate that. You might get lucky and penetrate it. The only way you penetrate it is because your shot was a little bit off to the side, because that is a gun mantle right there, and it is a very thick gun mantle. It has a gun mantle on a gun mantle. That your shots are not going to go through that. It's troll. Do not shoot at the top of that. If you do, its commander hatch is right by the gun mantle. If you look, you'll see a little round ring with 3 little prongs sticking up as I'm going around it. See this little ring at the top of the tank right here with the 3 little prongs? That is its viewport. If you shoot that, you will damage this tank. But it is a very small target to hit. Basically, if one of these are up in your face, that is what you want to shoot at. If they are right up in your face, it is a very small target to hit, but that's what I would aim for if you come across one of these things and this thing is hold down. If this thing is hold down, it is very hard to do any damage to this tank. Now when you're in this tank, artillery love to shoot you. You are a slow moving target. Artillery will aim for you, and lots of tanks will fire high explosive rounds at you because they know they cannot penetrate your armor. They will fire high explosive rounds into you and slowly wither your hit points away. Now let's talk about the side armor. Side armor is 76 millimeters thick. So if anyone gets around to the side of you, they will be able to penetrate your tank. It does have some sloping on the side. Some of the lower tier tanks will have trouble. You might bounce some shots off the side if you angle your armor. Bounces. The rear of this armor is only 38 millimeters thick. Very, very thin. Everything is going to be able to penetrate you from the back. So if you come across one of these things, you want to try and get around it as fast as possible if you are able to, if you have a very mobile tank. Medium tanks and light tanks is this thing's worst nightmare if it is by itself. You do not want to be by yourself in this tank. You want to have support if you are pushing. Let's talk about the engine of this tank. This tank gets a 875 horsepower engine. That is not a very good engine for such a heavy tank. That is why you are so slow. The horsepower to weight ratio of this tank is only 11.71 tons. The traverse speed of this tank is 24 degrees per second. Very bad traverse speed. Tanks will get around you very easily if you were out in the open. Let's talk about your chances of a fire in this tank. You have a 20% chance of getting set on fire in this tank. That is about average. If someone gets behind you and starts shooting you from behind, they can set you on fire. I don't get set on fire too often in this tank, but my engine does get damaged. Let's talk about the view range. The view range of this tank is 400 meters. Now you can get that up with situational awareness, recon, binoculars, brothers in arms, case of cola. Let's talk about the traverse arc of the gun. The gun moves about 8 degrees from side to side. Not bad. The gun does have some mobility to it from side to side. Not too great. I mean, you're not going to be able to angle way over here or way over here. You're going to have to move your tank, but the gun does have some mobility to it. Let's talk about the ammo for this tank. This tank fires standard armor piercing rounds. it fires APCR rounds, and it fires high explosive rounds. The AP and the APCR rounds do 750 hit points on average. Now, I usually high roll when I fire this gun. I hardly ever do the average of 750. I usually do about 800 to 900 hit points a shot in this tank. Sometimes I do low roll, sometimes I do a 700 or like a 690. The high explosive rounds do 1,100 hit points, but the high explosive rounds only have 90 millimeters of penetration. You only want to fire your high explosive rounds at thinly armored tanks, such as artillery, or what I usually use the high explosive rounds for are going up against Waffenträger off E100s. You're going to take at least half of their hit points away with one shot, which means you can two-shot a Waffenträger off E100 if you do the average of 1,100. Now your armor-piercing rounds get 295 millimeters of penetration, excellent, and your APCR rounds do 375 millimeters of penetration. The AP rounds are going to cost you 1,650 silver, and your APCR rounds are going to cost you 13 gold, or roughly 4,500 silver. Your high explosive rounds are going to cost you 1,120 silver. Let's talk about shell speed. The high explosive and the armor piercing rounds do 870 millimeters per second. No, meters per second. While the APCR rounds do 1,088 meters per second. Which is what's great about the APCR. They move faster and get to their target. But the thing with APCR is, over distance, their penetration power drops off. The damage per minute of this tank is 2,647.5 hit points per minute is what you will be doing on average. Is what this tank is capable of doing. I mean, you're not going to do that in a battle. I mean, tanks aren't going to sit there and just let you shoot at them, but that's what it's capable of doing. The rate of fire of this tank is 3.53 rounds per minute, so you're roughly going to get off about 3.5 rounds a minute. Your reload time on this tank is 17 seconds. Now, that's without a gun rammer, 100% crew, or anything like that, brothers in arms. You can get that reload time down. The accuracy of this gun is pretty good, 0.36 accuracy, very good accuracy. The aim time of this gun is 2.5 seconds. You can get that down with equipment and other skills and perks. Now let's talk about one of the strengths of this tank. Gun depression. This tank gets 8 degrees of gun depression, which means you're going to be able to pop over a hill, aim down at a tank, hiding your lower part of your tank, and shooting at a tank, and they're not going to be able to damage you. That is one of the strong points of this tank. This tank destroyer is the only tank destroyer at tier 10 who gets such great gun depression. That is one of the strengths of this tank. That's what you want to do. You want to find a hold down position where you can hide your lower glacis and just expose the front part of this tank and fire down or fire at people. The gun elevation is 16 degrees. That's also somewhat pretty good. The ammo capacity, you get 27 rounds in this tank. Let's talk about the camo values of this tank. This tank gets 9% camo value rating while stationary. While in motion, it is 4%. And then while you are firing, it is 2.17% camo value. Let's talk about the battle performance of this tank. This is for the average player playing solo, not in platoons. But if you're just playing solo, your average accuracy for this tank is going to be 77% accuracy when firing. So you're going to hit your target 77% of the time for the average player. The win rate is going to be about 50.5% win rate for the average player. The damage dealt in an average game is going to be about 2,205 damage dealt. So if you're doing 2,205 damage in a battle, you're doing average in this tank. In a battle, if you go into a battle and you do 2,205 damage, you did an average game. Your kills per battle is going to be about 2 kills per battle. If you're playing an average game and you're an average player. So let's talk about what this tank is great at. This tank is great at holding down flanks. You want to find a spot. I play this tank aggressively. You want to find a spot, hold down the flank, and try and hold it down as much as possible until your team can push through, or you're sitting there holding it for your team on the other side to hopefully push through on the other side and can come and help support you. Now that is one of the downfalls of this tank because it is so slow. You have to look to see what tanks the enemy team has and try to determine where the majority of the enemy is going to be, so you can support. Because you're so heavily armored, you're going to be able to ricochet shots and help support your team. You're not going to be able to change positions very quickly in this tank if you go down a wrong flank and there's no one there. So if you happen to defend you guys' flank and your team's able to push through, what I normally do is turn back around and head back to my base to defend my base. If I see that the other flank is going to falter, you have to pay attention to the map. If you realize that the flank on the other side is going to falter, or you realize that there's a hole where the team has pushed through, you need to head back to the base and defend. Now, if it looks like that the other flank is going to maybe make it, you want to continue pushing forward with your team and continue to help support them. You can play this tank very, very aggressively because of its armor. That is how I play this tank. That may not be how your style of play is. You may play this tank more conservatively. You may play it as your traditional tank destroyer, where you sit back and support your team. You try to remain hidden. Which is why we're going to get on to equipment. For equipment, carry a large caliber tank gun rammer, enhanced gun lane drive, and improved ventilation class. Because I play this tank very aggressively. Improved vents help with everything. It's going to help with my aim time, my reload speed, my view range, everything. I have an enhanced gun lane drive to help with my aiming time, help me get my 2.5 seconds down. I have a large caliber tank gun rammer, so that way I can reload faster. Now, if you're not going to play this tank aggressively, I would recommend maybe leaving one of these out, maybe putting on camouflage or binocular telescope. Those two would not be bad to put on this tank. Now, you are slow in this tank, so artillery is going to take a liking to you in this tank, so you want to make sure that you're in a position to where you're not going to get fired on by artillery. Let's talk about consumables. We get armor piercing, armor composite rigid, and high explosive. I usually carry about 4 high explosive rounds. Your armor piercing rounds have good enough penetration to where it's going to penetrate the frontal turret of an E100 and even a Jagdpanzer E100. I've used standard armor piercing to penetrate the frontal armor of a Jagdpanzer E100. These shells have very good penetration. I've recently loaded armor-piercing composite rigid rounds because of the mouse. For when the mouse is angled, I usually load these up, and these can usually penetrate the mouse when it is angled somewhat fairly decently. I fire high explosive at lightly armored tanks such as artillery and Waffenträger off E100s or any of the Waffenträger line light tanks. Let's talk about supplies that maybe you should put on this tank. A small repair kit would probably be pretty good. The only thing that's usually going to get damaged on this tank is your tracks or your engine. I usually don't use a repair kit to repair my tracks. It's usually just for my engine. I only use it for my tracks if it's absolutely necessary to do. It would not be bad to maybe get a large first aid kit instead of a small first aid kit like I have on mine, because artillery will hit you and they will knock out multiple crew members sometimes, so a large first aid kit would not be bad. Now this tank can get set on fire pretty averagely. An automatic fire extinguisher would not be bad to put on this tank. I've just went with a manual fire extinguisher because I don't tend to get set on fire very often while I'm playing the E3. But I have seen on numerous occasions, and I have done it very often, I have set T110E3s on fire, so an automatic fire extinguisher would not be bad to put. If you're not going to go with a fire extinguisher, you might want to go with maybe case of cola. I would not go with octane gasoline. You're so slow and your engine is so bad that you're not really going to see too much of a difference. But with that out of the way, I'm going to show you guys 2 replays in this tank. The first replay is going to be a loss, but I'm going to show you guys that replay because I want to show you guys what this tank is capable of doing whenever it is outnumbered, when there's more of the enemy and less of your allies, and what this tank can do when you play this tank aggressively. And the second battle is going to be basically the same thing, but it is going to be a win. There's less enemies, but I want to show you guys what to do whenever you have pushed through a flank, and what you need to do when you've pushed through the flank and you've made it to a base, and you are outnumbered whenever you get to the base and you have no support and you're kind of by yourself and you're waiting for the support. So with that in mind, I'm going to let you guys watch those 2 replays. I'm going to add commentary to those replays at this time, to let you guys know what I was kind of thinking during the course of the battle, what my strategy and thinking was as I was doing the things that I was doing. Okay, this first match is Abby. This is a standard battle. This match we lose, but I want to show you guys this replay because of what I want to show you guys what this tank is capable of doing while holding down a flank when your side is outnumbered. Now at the beginning of this match, I look at the map. I want to see what tanks they have and where I think the majority of the team is going to go. And I see that there is no artillery. And since there is no artillery, I'm going to take this right flank because I realize that I will be able to hold this flank fairly well without the artillery here. So I take this riverside. Now my thinking is that I am probably going to see some of their more heavily armored tanks coming down this flank. I'm expecting to see the E75, maybe the FV215B, maybe the Jagdpanzer E100. I'm expecting a tank destroyer, or maybe 2 tank destroyers to come down this flank and help support. But I'm trying to come down this flank as fast as possible to spot. I realize that there's an E100 and a T95 coming to help support me. I'm trying to get in position to see if I can't spot anyone coming down this flank, and right away I spot an M103, have not been spotted yet. I try to get in position, take a shot, realize I don't have a shot. I spot an E75, can't get a shot on him, spot a T32, put a shot into him, and I track him. Now I'm hoping that the E100 or T95 that's behind me can put a shot into him, but they are unable to. Now I have not been spotted yet. They do not know that I'm here. They know that the T32 has been shot. They don't know by what. Now I'm waiting for my teammates to come. The E100 is here. I realize that he's here, so now I back up. And I'm thinking that the M103 is going to come out, but he doesn't. I'm thinking that he's going to be aggressive because he's only going to think there's an E100 there, but he doesn't. So I push forward, and now I'm going to get spotted. Now they realize I'm here, and the E75 blows my tracks off. He misses. I blow the M103's tracks off, hoping that the E100 can put a shot into him. Now here, I get in this position here to hide the lower part of my tank, but I get into a bad hold down position, and the top of my tank is exposed. And there I take a shot in the top of my tank. So I move, I reposition myself so I'm not exposing the top of my tank. Now I'm in a better position. I put a shot into the FV215B, and someone has fired a high explosive round into me. As I said at the beginning, lots of tanks will fire high explosive rounds into you because they won't be able to penetrate their armor. Now see the T32, he is the one who's firing high explosive rounds. He exposes his commander hatch. I put a shot into his commander hatch and take him out. Now the only thing that's left is an M103 and an E75. This T95 pushes past me. Now I get behind him thinking that he's going to continue to push. He stops. He gets tracked. He puts a shot into him. I back off. E100 pulls up. E100 takes a shot, clears out the M103. Now the E100 is taking a shot. He backs off, lets me in. Me and the T95 continue to push forward. E75 sees me coming. He tries to hide his lower plate, but is unable to. And I put a shot into his lower plate. Now he panics here. He comes out, which is a bad idea, and lets this E100 put a shot into him. From the position that he was in, he may have been able to defend a little bit longer. Now here I realize that the other flank has faltered. Where our middle has faltered and we have been flanked. There's an AMX 50B. He was spotted earlier down that flank. He has moved all the way around. I panic and I miss my shot. I was not fully aimed in. That was a bad shot. As you see later, that is going to come back and bite me in the butt. If I was able to put a shot into him, he may not have been able to do what he does here in a little bit. That is a very dangerous tank though. Now I'm pushing forward thinking I'm going to have help from the E100 and T95. I think that they realize what is going on, but I don't realize that, and they're continuing to push. Now I meet a medium tank. He stops and pulls back. I miss my shot. Great play by that M486 patent player. Now I move forward. I ram him trying to track him. I'm face hugging him. He puts a shot into my side. I back my butt up against the wall so he can't get around me, forcing him to move. I set him on fire with a shot. Now I'm face hugging him again. I ram him, face hugging him again. Now that AMX 50B puts a shot into me, and then the M46 patent is able to finish me off. Now, if I was able to put a shot into that AMX-50B, I very likely doubt that he would have came out and tried to do what he did, thinking that I would have put a shot into him and maybe finished him off or whatever. But that was a great play by that M46 Patton player and that AMX-50B player. But this T95 and E100 were a little bit too late by the time they realized what was happening. Now they're the only two left. But as you saw, that's basically what you want to do whenever you're coming up against a medium tank. You want to fire, move your tank into them, ram them, doing more damage to them, and maybe tracking them in place. I wasn't able to do so on that one, but as I was ramming him, I was doing damage to his tank. He was basically one shot from death. He was probably going to get one more shot into me if it wasn't for that AMX-50B driver. Those two did an excellent job right there. That was great teamwork. Now this T95 and E100 are trying to defend the best that they can, but they're just waiting to meet their doom. I believe the E100 goes down first. They go down with a fight. They're both in pretty good positions right here. They're both defending each other's backsides. But as soon as one of them goes down, the other one is basically going to be done for. But that was basically a misplay by me. I was thinking that I was having support from maybe the E100 or T95. I was just basically worried about the base at that point in time. But as you saw, with the E3 there, we were able to defend the majority of those tanks with just 3 tanks. Although the T95 was with us, this is also a very heavily armored tank. I will be doing a review on that tank at some point also. But with an E100, T95, and E3 there was no way that any of those tanks were going to get past us. We were basically an unmovable force. Now we are here on Pacific Island. This is an assault battle. We do win this match. But once again, I'm going to be showing you guys the strengths of this tank. Now, this one, we're not going up against as many enemy players as we did on Abby. I showed you guys the Abby match to show you guys what this tank can do whenever you guys are outnumbered. This tank isn't so. This tank here is more so waiting for your team to come help support you. Now, I take a look at the map, and I realize that a lot of these tanks are heavy tanks and medium tanks. So I'm thinking that they're going to go around towards this left flank. So I'm heading towards the left flank because I want to hold this flank. I feel like if you're playing Pacific Island and it is an assault battle and you are defending, you need to play this map aggressively if you want to win. If you're sitting back on that hill, I feel like you are not going to win this map. Unless you're on the right side, you may want to sit on the hill, but you need to have people forward spotting for other tanks, for your tank destroyers. But as I'm coming around, I realize that a heavy tank has been spotted. I'm not for sure what heavy tank it is. I realize that a couple other tanks have been spotted up on the hill. Now the light tank rushes ahead. He's doing his job. He's going to go spot for us. There's also a medium tank up ahead also. It is a Patton. He's up there doing his job. He's up there spotting. He spots a tank destroyer. Now at this point, I'm not for sure what tank destroyer it is. I wasn't expecting a tank destroyer to come over here, and it is the Death Star. I was expecting most of the tank destroyers to sit up on that hill. So I continue to push forward since only 2 tanks have been spotted over there by that flank. Right now, the only thing we have supporting us is a light tank, a medium tank, and myself. But here, a little bit, a heavy tank if I believe right, a medium tank is with us. I don't see him right at the moment in time. I'm just thinking it's us three at this moment because I'm not for sure exactly what his thinking is in this map. I'm not for sure if he's going to come down this flank or not. So I push forward. They're not spotting anything yet. Light tank and medium tank haven't spotted anything yet. So I continue to push forward. I wait a little bit to see if something's going to come right here. And there, I see that there's a heavy tank hiding back there. So what I'm going to do is wait a little bit because I realize that the Death Star was spotted. And I'm not for sure how forward up that FV215B183 is. So I don't see him, so I push forward. Now I'm going to use this hill to hide my lower plate. I know this hill right here is going to hide my lower plate. I look to the side to see if the hill can hide my lower plate, and it is capable of doing it. Now I am spotted. I don't know what I'm spotted by, but I continue to move my tank forwards and backwards so that way they don't have a good shot. And right away, M103 shows up. I put a shot into him. He puts a shot into me, enabling to penetrate my lower plate because of this hill. So he hits the front part of my tank. Now this light tank takes a couple of shots. He's doing a great job. He's using me as armor. Great job by that little light tank. Now that little light tank ends up making a mistake here later in the battle. He's doing a great job right now of using me for cover. Now, I spot the Death Star. He has the top of his tank exposed, a very high profile tank. Put a shot into the top of his turret. I've been spotted. I'm pretty sure that he's side scraping out to get a shot on me, but as soon as he backs away, I get unspotted because of my camo value and this bush that's right there in front of me. I do have camouflage on this tank, so now I'm unspotted. That tank destroyer has no way of seeing me or where I'm at. But now he comes back forward because he can't see me, and now I can see him. He's been spotted. Now I've been spotted as soon as I fire. And I put another shot into him. Now this heavy tank comes out. He's going to support. I'm going to come and help support this heavy tank. Now I'm not for sure what this M103 was thinking by going up there. Now the Patton finishes him off. I back up. Angle my armor. This M103 is done for. I don't know what he was thinking by going up there. I put a shot into him, finish him off. Now, we have cleared out this flank. We are winning right now, 7-5, so I'm feeling fairly confident that our other flank is going to win, considering I only see 2 tanks trying to guard the right flank. It seems like the majority of the tanks may be up in the middle. So now I am pushing forward. Now this is where the little light tank makes a mistake. He was doing a great job up until this point. He rushes ahead up into their base. I'm guessing he was thinking that there was going to be no one there. But they still have half of their tanks left. But he doesn't wait for us. I'm not exactly for sure where that medium tank went, and I'm not for sure what this heavy tank is doing. I'm not exactly for sure what those 2 tanks are doing, but I am pushing forward. Now right away I realized that there is an IS-8 spotted. So when that little light tank went up there and basically committed suicide, he spotted that IS-8. So at this point I'm thinking that there's only an IS-8 up here. No problem for me. But he is in a very good position. Now, as I'm coming up, Tiger 2 is spotted. I angle my armor forward. I realize that he's not going to be able to penetrate me. He takes a shot. I aim at him. He ducks back behind cover. Now I realize he is not going to come back out. But now I realize I am outnumbered. They have both my flanks, so if I try and come out to try and get this IS-8, that Tiger 2 is going to come over and get me. Now I realize that there's a Waffenträger off of 100, so now I am outnumbered 1-3. Now I see the Patton. He's coming around. He's getting messed up by the Waffenträger off of 100. I try and put a shot into the IS-8, miss. My shot goes into the rock. Tiger 2 tries to take another shot at me, misses and ricochets off the side of my tank. Now I also realize that there's a medium tank down there as well. So I am outnumbered 1-4 in the spot that I'm in. So I am sitting and waiting for my team on the other flank to push around. Now this IS-8 is getting kind of antsy because he knows I'm here. Now I realize the Tiger 2 has come out. I turn my tank Tiger 2 has made a mistake. I put a shot into the Tiger 2. He's on low hit points. I know I don't have him to worry about anymore. I'm waiting to reload, and as soon as I reload, I'm going to come up and over and get this IS-8. Now this IS-8 is not paying attention to me, so I come around, he panics, tries to ram me. Not gonna happen, buddy. Take him out. Now the only thing that's left is a Waffentrigger off E100. Low hit points. I don't have time to fire or load high explosive rounds. I aim, fire, get the final kill, and we win the battle. So that is what you guys should do if you guys are ever in that situation. You guys don't want to. Now, if those tanks were smart, they would have rushed me. I was by myself over there. There was not. I would have only been able to get maybe one shot. That IS-8 was on one kill, or was one shot, yes. But as soon as I fired a shot, that Waffentrigger off E100 could have cleaned my clock. The Tiger 2 may have been able to get around to my sides. I don't know, but they could have done so many other different things. But thank you for watching.